Good afternoon. My name is Tanya Amos. I am a master's level social work student at WK University. And today we are going to be talking about self psychology. So, self psychology was developed by Heinz Kohut, and he tended to introduce the idea of self object as it relates to self esteem and one person's sense of self. The idea behind this is that as children are growing up, their caretakers play a vital role in how they perceive their self object and their self esteem. If the caregiver is um, good to them, then they're going to have a good sense of self esteem and of self object. Okay? If the caretaker is maybe not so good to the child may develop issues related to self esteem and in turn for that self object. Um, it's really important that whenever a child is a baby is born, that they are nurtured and they are shown that they are loved. And that in turn will give that child a good concept of being a self object, of having that higher self esteem and that sense of self that children need to um, to grow up in the world loving themselves and having healthy relationships in life. He did introduce three specific self object relationships to obtain a healthy sense of self. First one is mirroring. So that's where the self object identifies a child's unique talents and capabilities. When we're talking about self object, we're talking about the caretakers and the child itself. So whenever the caretaker is identifying the child's unique talents and capabilities, that helps to build on that child's sense of self and self esteem. So whenever they come to you and they're telling you, "Hey, mom, look, I did a good job," and you look at them and you're like, "You did a good job." I'm mirroring what the child is telling me, and it's helping me to give them a better sense of self esteem. The second one was idealizing. That sort of links the child with the caregiver. That is sort of like a lot of times with like gender roles. If the like a girl wants to wear her mom's makeup, um, and they like to follow them around and they like to be just like them. They idealize them. They think that they are hung the moon and the stars. That is their caregiver, and they love them very much. So it links that child with the caregivers, maybe a boy with the father, wanting to follow the father everywhere they go, wanting to just be around them. Same thing with a daughter and a mother, just wanting to idealize them, to be like them. The third one is the alter ego. So that provides a sense of sameness with both self objects, sometimes called twinship. So that's sort of like what I talked about earlier with the little girl wanting to put their makeup on, just like their mommy puts their makeup on. Or maybe a little boy is has a little toy lawnmower and he's outside and he's mowing the lawn with his daddy, and he has that I'm doing the same thing my daddy's doing. It provides a sense of sameness. And whenever uh, a man is teaching his son how to potty train, that provides a sense of sameness for both of them. It's sometimes called twinship, and I can see why it would be called that. Little boys, little girls, they want to be just like twins of their parents. Empathy. Empathy is one of our biggest tools in a therapy practice. One of our biggest tools as a social worker is the ability to use empathy. So, Kohut defined empathy as a therapist's ability to investigate the patient's inner world. So, whenever I'm with a client, I am trying to find out more about them. I'm trying to make them comfortable and feel safe. I'm being empathetic with what they're telling me, and I'm repeating it back to them to show that I have active listening skills as well. That's also part of being empathetic. Um, and he also believed that being able to be understood by another individual gives the person affirmation, which is vital when developing other meaningful relationships. Like I just talked about that, um, uh, reflecting that back to them. Okay, I am giving them affirmation that I am listening to them. That's empathy. All right, so it is a tool in which the therapist is able to gather valuable information on the patient. Um, if you are empathetic in your sessions, you will be able to gather so much information from that client that maybe if you were being unempathetic, you might not have got from them. Asking questions like, um, I'm so sorry that happened to you. Was there anything that you did that could have made that better? Was there anything you could do that could make you feel better? Is there any way I can help you to work through this? Being empathetic with the client to help them solve their problems. Um, it's also to determine if needs were not met when they were younger, and then developing a plan to make the patient feel safe. When children's needs are not met when they're younger, they develop different types of behaviors, and we have to recognize those behaviors as possibly being a trauma response due to not having anyone that was empathetic in their home or their needs not being met. And it goes to say resistance and defense are normal for self protection if one is anticipating injury or pain. If a child grew up in a household where abuse was the normal thing, then it's my job to help them to know that they are in a safe place now and being empathetic to their story. The therapist views resisting the therapist or therapy as valid reasons for self protection. Those are valid reasons. These clients are still trying to protect themselves. And it doesn't matter if they've been removed from the unsafe situation, the clients are still trying to protect themselves because those learned behaviors take a very long time to change. Um, and that's when we're going to work on trying to find out what the fears they have from their life and what fears they might have from the therapeutic relationship, because clients they might feel uncomfortable in a therapeutic relationship. They may not trust people yet, and that's okay. We have to meet them where they're at. All right, so the role of the therapist in self psychology. So this was shifted from the view of Freud's view of the neutrality of the therapist to a two-person model where the client's feelings are seen as the client's current behaviors, past experiences, and the present relationship with the therapist. And they're understood that to focus on the client's experience may not have always been empathetic or helpful. And sometimes that happens. Sometimes clients come in and they don't really want to talk about those things. I need to see and know that that their behaviors are probably based off their past experiences because our experiences create our belief systems. And if our experiences create our belief systems and we had bad experiences growing up, it's going to be very difficult to come in and trust another person to help them. Maybe others haven't been empathetic with them and maybe they shut down. So it's my job to help them feel safe and to know that sometimes those behaviors and feelings are just based off of their past experiences. Optimal frustration. Those can be empathetic failures of professionals. It can be of empathetic failures of caregivers. Um, we may not always be able to provide what the client required for self-object needs. Sometimes the needs of the client, they may not, what we're trying to help them with, they might not be able to complete, or they may not be willing to want to complete them because they're still on the defense. So we need to understand that when something like that happens, we need to, as a therapist, recognize our mistakes and acknowledge them and communicate. the mistakes without criticism or judgment, letting them know, I do apologize. I thought that this intervention would work for you or that you were ready to take this on and you weren't. So I do apologize for that. And let's see what we can do different. It contributes to the development of the intrapsychic structure. And what that means, it helps them to learn to tolerate frustration, and it helps them to develop internal capabilities where I'm able to sometimes get that self-soothing. I'm able to learn how to change my emotions to something different. Not so much change my emotions, but change my reactions to my emotions. Um, the clients After that, the clients can now move away from the childhood need for mirroring, idealizing, and twinship experiences with self-object to more emotionally immature, healthy relationships in life. And that's part of our job, is to help them to do that. We need to help them to change their experiences so that they can change their belief system, especially if that child was abused when they were younger. It's part of our job to help them to learn how to tolerate frustration and to develop those internal capabilities. And also making sure that when we make mistakes, we're going to admit them, because we're people too, and we make mistakes, and the client will respect you more if you admit your mistakes. And this is my reference page. I use the textbook, um, Clinical Social Work Practice and an Integrated Approach, the sixth edition. There was a lot of really valid and good information in here, and I learned a lot doing this PowerPoint. Thank you, and I hope you have a great rest of your night.